When you think of Final Fantasy VI, what do you think of? Probably a lot, since it's an ambitious classic that transcends time, space, whatever dimension you can name. Its ambitious presentation still impresses today, with the revolutionary opening credits sequence that depicts 3 mechs traveling through the snow to a version of Terra's theme, creating an instant sense of epic adventure on the horizon, while also evoking a hint of sadness. King in that this trudge through the oppressive snow might be indicative of Terra's entire life up to this point. Then there's the delightfully creative opera house sequence, giving a dynamic opera performance that provides some subtext to Celeste, followed by an exuberant sequence of fighting against a horny octopus to a dynamic orchestra. But even beyond its presentation, 6 also marks a shift in the Final Fantasy series as a whole. Game director Yoshinori Kitase says that there was a very distinct focus on fleshing out the characters in the production, and credits the game's influence for the emphasis on the series' character writing forward. This emphasis results in an early example of a character study masterpiece within a video game. There's a lot of depth in the characters brought out by the charming personality, structure, and musical motifs to highlight a cast of people who struggle with various ideas about their struggles and meaning in life. Final Fantasy has such an intentional use of music, and 6 is no exception, constantly using motifs to evoke emotion and subconsciously express a story to us. Like when Terra awakes, we hear a melancholy version of her theme in Awakening. It's a song that is slower and more broken up than the theme we hear in the overworld. It is less confident and shows a sense of confusion and loneliness, which describes Terra's situation to a T. A song that places us in the character's most personal moments as she figures out her place in life. These are ideas that are expressed in the text and or subtext of Final Fantasy VI, but it's an effective way to get immersed into the feelings itself through music. FF6 doesn't have the expressive visual storytelling of future Final Fantasy entries, but it doesn't when you've got Nobuo Uematsu doing this. Locke's theme expresses his adventurous and heroic spirit and the drive he has, which is an immediate contrast to Terra's melancholic and confused motif in Awakening. His theme gives him this vibe of being self-assured, confident, and heroic, which is shown by his insistence on being called a treasure hunter instead of a thief, since the latter has a negative connotation to it, not being very heroic. However, this becomes more interesting as there is a clear dichotomy within his character from this heroic, adventurous theme, as over the course of the game you can tell Locke has this unhealthy and incessant obsession with keeping a promise of protecting someone, like with Terra and then Celeste. Then the setting of Final Fantasy VI is immediately interesting as well, with Anarch being an immediately atmospheric area with some interesting visual details and lore. It establishes the sort of steampunk-esque setting in the game. It is surrounded by snowy black mountains, with the architecture itself being a color palette between bronze and some sort of gray with, smoke permeating the air like it's a van hotbox. Figaro Castle builds off the steampunk-esque world style by being this mesh of medieval castles embedded within technology built on top of a desert. It's like they picked 3 random ideas out of a hat and were like, oh yeah, this is cool. But Igor and Sabin share their theme with the Figaro Castle theme. Well, they technically have 2 themes like Terra. Both of these themes together establish a dualism that captures the brazen nature of the brothers and then their emotional side. The one that captures that emotion is Coin of Fate, a song used in one of my favorite scenes in the game, which gives the flirty Edgar and then the musclehead Sabin an emotional side to them, including some recontextualization later. Coin of Fate uses the same motifs as Figaro Castle, which makes the theme feel like it represents the sentimental bond between brothers, like thinking nostalgically yet sadly back on the days where they grew up together in Figaro. No matter what, that love will be there despite their diverging paths. Edgar seems to be the self-indulgent flirt, but really he's kind and selfless, often doing things for others. Edgar is a very compassionate man, like telling off Bannon for telling Tara of the things she did when she was mind-controlled and saying that he doesn't want to force her to do anything if she doesn't want to do it. He gives his brother his freedom, making it think it was up to chance so Sabin doesn't feel bad about Edgar losing this potential freedom. It's heartwarming but also sad because it gives vibes of Edgar being this lonely soul, being lonely in order to give his brother and the people he serves everything he can give. When his dad is dying, he runs away from his brother so he doesn't see his tears. He was pretty much forced to be mature at a young age because of the responsibility of a ruler. Now, Edgar and Sabin's backstory was designed by Kaori Tanaka, also known as Soraya Saga. If you aren't familiar with her, she wrote the story of Xenogears with her husband, Tetsuya Takahashi, jump-starting the Xenos franchise. Tanaka describes Edgar's flirtiness with women coming from the loss of his mother as an infant and his first love being an older woman, who told Edgar to grow up to be a good man. And Edgar proceeded to study the art of Riz. Ultimately, the older woman was killed in a political rivalry, and Edgar's feelings remained forever unrequited. Very happy. She was apparently a very spirited woman, which remains Edgar's version of the ideal woman. None of this backstory is within the game, obviously, but I think it's easy to build some sort of interpretation of Edgar's flirtiness, being tied to more deeper, complex feelings to cure some sort of loneliness. This meta information is just stuff that kind of helps build a case that there was clearly deeper intentions with this aspect of Edgar's character. Cyan exudes pride and loyalty, but he is also a walking tragedy lying underneath that exterior, which is what his theme perfectly captures. It encapsulates the honor and selflessness he carries while also carrying the guilt and loss he feels over his kingdom and his family. His theme also makes for a great contrast paired with his goofier side, like the scene of him hiding the letters. Shadow's theme uses a bit of intertextuality as it borrows the vibes of Western cowboy loner theme. This and the initial interaction with the group gives the vibes of a mysterious outlaw. His character screen says his face is known to none who live, which already gives the vibes of a guy that doesn't have any sort of relations with anyone besides his nice little doggy. What is up there for my favorite theme in the game, if not my favorite, is Kefka's, a work of pure genius and artistry. The beginning is a tune of understated, mischievous, somewhat flamboyant malevolence, before ascending into powerful chaos. This theme is Kefka personified. Like, fuck this clown. Lots of things are a bother to Kefka unless it brings pain onto others or snuffs out life. In order to improve his mood after trekking out into the desert, something that is an absolute pain to him, he sadistically orders his soldiers to wipe the sand off his boots, something that's rather useless as he is in the desert. The irony of the meaninglessness of this act and simply just messing with his soldiers clearly amuses him as he belts out his first iconic laugh. The poisoning of Doma to the Phantom Tree is a great sequence for the character of Cyan. It might feel like a bit of tonal whiplash for Cyan's family to die right before his eyes, and then he goes out to fight troops out of rage, but then starts to get in silly shenanigans and banter with Sabin. But that's where the scene at the end of the Phantom Train, where he sees his family boarding it into this afterlife, is genius, as he hasn't had time yet to properly grieve as he immediately seeks justice. But in the quiet of the forest where he chases after the train to see off his wife and child, the tragedy finally sets. The game goes silent for the scene and slightly lingers on Cyan, taking it all in, giving us that moment of contemplation for the first time since the poisoning of Doma. The whole goofy side adventures of Save and Cyan, and maybe Shadow if you recruit him, we're all just avoiding this painful reality. Not to mention, the entire Phantom Train is iconic with cool-ass music and atmosphere that isn't too spooky, so it doesn't betray the game's kind of goofy tone, as they have stuff like friendly ghosts that tag along and help you out. The aspects of like Cyan being more scared of machinery aspects of the Phantom Train than the actual ghosts walking around, and Mr. Deepshit Siegfried all bring a humorous feel but still communicates, oh, we're on a one-trip way to oblivion. This whole segment of the story following Salem gives him the vibes of the everyman of the game. He's impulsive and reckless, but also tends to act the straight man to characters like Cyan and Gao, giving him that grounded to reality feeling, but still having this kind of, like cockiness to him. Gao's introduction describes him as a boy with eyes shining with a warm and gentle light. When recruiting him into your party, the scene afterward is intriguing as he comes off as this feral boy who can't speak in full sentences or stand up as a biped, and is slightly immature as he starts playing around with Sabin and poking fun at Cyan. Then Sabin explains to Gao how Cyan lost his family recently, and Gao immediately understands and empathizes, then apologizes to Cyan. He's not the brightest bulb in the shop, but he has a strong, intuitive, emotional intelligence that makes him stick out. When first introduced to Celeste, her character info screen says, "No one knows the woman beneath the general's guise." Similarly to my feelings on Edgar, my immediate gut reaction is always, what a lonely thing when someone doesn't let anyone in on how they actually are feeling or what their actual personality is. With Celeste specifically, this feeling compiles as there is a moment of distrust or doubt from Locke when Kefka tries to pull, "Oh, she was actually spying for us the whole time, can you believe that? Hey man." Celeste's theme is a motif ripped from the song Aria di Mezzo Curator. I think that's Italian. I don't. Sung by her in the whole opera sequence. It's essentially a love song, a song of a woman longing for love. At the point when Celeste sings the song, it seems funny for it to be sung by this hardened war criminal. But the more abstract feelings of the song really describe Celeste really well, especially when you understand that she is a woman that wants to be loved for who she really is beneath the guise of a general. Realm's theme is innocent and serene. Realm is one of the many instances where Final Fantasy VI highlights the importance of children, of young, blossoming life. Terra finds her purpose in life and finds love by protecting her basically adopted children as they reaffirm her existence, but he's still loving her despite her being a half-asper. The generic town theme that's used is homey and soothing, and it's called Kids Running Through the City. Realm isn't battling with these insane existential inner conflicts, but that's the point. She embodies a lot of what is beautiful about life and what the characters are trying to protect. The innocence, but also the cheekiness of youth as she enjoys being impish. Final Fantasy VI focuses on the hope that young life can give, so Realm being an embodiment of that idea is important. It makes her simplicity a strong positive rather than a lack thereof. She captures forests, water, and light in her paintings, capturing the very essence of these things, like life itself. The world pre-Ruin isn't necessarily perfect, as you have places like Zozo, a place created from all the poor people forced out of wealthy towns like Jidor, which runs auctions for recreation for the citizens. And what a poetic way for Terra to wind up there after unlocking her Esper form. A half Esper that doesn't feel like she belongs winds up in a town filled with people who didn't belong anywhere else in the world because of poverty. And I love how realized Zozo is in the remaster, the never-ending rain accentuating the blue and contrasting against the neon light signs of the shops, the graffiti, the otherwise poor condition of the town. It's pretty damn fun to look at, even though this town kicks your ass. I mentioned how the structure leads the way for character exploration, and that comes during the World of Ruin. There isn't really a plot of a bunch of heroes going to stop a villain from world destruction because that's already happened. What the characters do afterward with the broken pieces of a world is telling for each character. All the characters are separated from each other, doing what they can to try to pick up their broken pieces in a broken world. It's a profound conclusion to have the characters come through it and try to stop Kefka once and for all, even if the world is broken, because they have found meaning in that brokenness. Starting this perspective with Celeste, someone who has been in a coma for a year, isolated from the world. She has no idea what is beyond the sea from her little island, and then if her friends are alive or not. If you save Sid, you get a little heartwarming, oh neat scene where he gives her a raft to see her off, and he just kind of stands there for the rest of the game like, thanks Celeste, thank you, that was nice. But I personally prefer the scene where she is unable to save him. When the only person she still knows is alive in this world is now unalive, she tries to jump from the cliff like the people before her, but somehow does not die. She then sees Locke's bandana wrapped around the wound of a seagull, giving her a slight glimmer of hope left in the world of ruin, and sets off with Sid's raft made before his demise, a symbol of a last act of love from her figurative grandpa. Seeing Saban do his usual crazy misadventures, holding up a building with his bare hands to save a kid, is a little wacky, but reassuring as it gives hope that the others are alive and still the same. Edgar shunning Celeste as he tries to hide his identity as a boss of bandits. You think maybe he had abandoned his identity as a king for his freedom to be more like Saban, but only to find it was a ruse in order to continue to be that selfless king that saves his kingdom ever since the day he flipped that coin. Then comes the reunion with Setzer, where Celeste encourages him to find a new dream, leading him to confront his past with Daryl and uncover her ship, the Falcon. And the World of Ruin, the overworld theme so far has been a theme filled with lament, filled with despair as you watch the world you once knew in a state of decay as you were separated from your friends. But then you take off in the Falcon, and searching for friends kicks in, rejuvenating a sense of hope that Setzer's old friend left him with as we use it to help reconnect with all our friends in this world of ruin. Setzer's backstory is insightful to finally fully get the bigger picture, as his gambling and pursuit of women must have all been to cover up the wound the death of his loved one created. The last remnant he had of her was the airships they used to race each other with, and once that's destroyed, he hits its lowest point, drinking his life away with no more dreams, until his friend pushes him to take a new dream, and goes back to the tomb of his beloved in order to take flight once again. This act of love, preserving the ship that symbolizes his connection to Daryl, is what gives them a chance to push forward and to take flight once again. Metaphorically. Cyan connects with Lola because of their identical situations, having both lost their beloveds, and perpetuates this lie that her boyfriend is alive out of empathy. but also because he sort of wants that sort of connection again. But eventually he yields this lie because he has come to know that this is not the way forward for him or for Lola. He states straightforwardly that we humans tend to get stuck in the past, but we shouldn't, because it is forever possible for us to look forward and rediscover love and all the other joys of life. Something that Cyan himself decides to put into practice after being stuck in the past. The memories before the world of ruin remain, but the light of dawn shall never change. Locke is in a similar position as Cyan, where he latches onto the past, having profound guilt towards his ex-lover Rachel. It shows in his interactions with Celeste and Tara of him having a fervent desire to keep them safe due to this past. By getting the Phoenix Esper, he isn't able to get the happy ending of truly reviving her, but gets the closure he needs from telling him how much she loved him all the way to the end. In this way, it gives him permission to truly love again, as she definitely passes on, but also shows him that it's okay to love another because he's an individual who brings happiness through his love, even if he can't always protect others. The scene of the gang trying to spruce Gao up with clothes is fun, watching them all argue over what would fit him more, but the final scene with Gao and his father is great for Gao's character. Despite being shunned by his dad, Gao simply is happy that his dad is still alive, even after the cruelty, because he's just this simple boy filled with nothing but kindness and love, even if his ability is called rage. Shadow's backstory pretty much reveals that he is Realm's biological father, which adds quite a bit to his character. One key line he has is a line to Tara where he tells her that there are people who kill their emotions on purpose. Edgar says that Shadow is the type of man who would kill his best friend for the right price, but we see that he cares too much to even kill his best friend, Bram, when he asks for it. He kills his emotions by running away from his baby mama and hiding his identity from the world, but still grows a kinship with the others and cares for his daughter, Realm. I think it's time we talk about arguably the game's most important character, Tara. When you meet Tara, she is a blank slate with no memories, and all she is told is how she was essentially this mindless murder machine that killed people undeservedly. She tells Locke that there's no one important in her life because she had no capacity to connect with anyone, even when she was under mind control. Tara is lost and lonely, and then immediately caught in between being an essential figure and a war by the returners. At this point, it's hard not to feel for her as everything keeps piling on her. Tara's existence is something unprecedented. The only being to ever be born from a human and an Esper is bound to create some sort of existential crisis. It's a normal thing for a human to wonder if they can love others or be loved, so imagine someone like Tara that is the only one out there of her kind, essentially. The only creature ever created the way she was, who was raised without any real love by the Empire, will create a living being that is so damn lost and confused with herself. She laments over not feeling any sort of feelings from Edgar's flirting, because what if she never will feel anything like that? It's said that humans and Espers can't coexist, so what if the two parts of her make up an invalid existence? Ramu has this line about Tara that's like, she's frightened of what she is, and that is painful. But as Maduin said to Madeline when she says that humans and Espers can't coexist, we won't know unless we try for ourselves. And Tara is in fact the result of love at its strongest and purest, the product of love between two species that were said to be incompatible. proof that love transcends dimensions, race, whatever. Terra is the truth that love exists even if she doesn't realize it at first. Even if she wants to know how to love as soon as possible, as indicated by her conversation with General Leo. But it's only after everything in the world has come to ruin that Terra finds a village of orphan children and decides to look after them. She finds love slowly by watching over these children who show her so much warmth for the kindness that is central to who she is. She is unsure of what it is at first, as any person with their past would be, but it all clicks when they accept her for who she is, even after seeing her Esper form. Having the people she loves love and accept her for who she is gives her the strength to fight for a world where they can live and love. And I think it's at this point that Terra's theme makes sense. The theme that plays in the overworld as you travel the world has wistful, sad undertones to it, yet there persists this sense of duty, a melody of perseverance as everyone fights to give their life meaning, just like Terra. On the exact opposite end of the spectrum from Terra is Kefka, this embodiment of vitriol for the human condition. He permeates his ideology of pessimism throughout the world. We see the dark side of humanity throughout the story, the war and destruction caused by the Empire because of Gestal's pursuit of power. Madeline, Terra's mother, leaves the human world behind, sick of its greed and destruction. Kefka sort of embodies that to an extent, generalizing life as this meaningless thing. Since all will be lost eventually, why bother? He's the thematic antithesis that brings this game together. The cast of Final Fantasy VI are people who have loved and lost that love. People who are stuck on things they've lost. People who aren't sure what they'd eventually gain. But they all found something that's worth living and fighting for. For Locke, it's a person worth protecting more than any treasure. Cyan carries the tender memories of his wife and child. Shido fights for his newfound friends and maybe even old, but also fights for the light he sees in his daughter Realm. Edgar still does everything for his duty towards his kingdom, and Sabin, the simple-minded brute, wants to fight for his beloved brother. Celeste finds someone who accepts her for who she is, someone who knows who she is underneath the general's guise. Rome and Strago live for each other, the simple love of a grandfather and granddaughter. Setzer fights for the literal and metaphorical wings of a friend of old, wings that restored hope in him and the others. And then Terra lives for love itself, embodying what all of the characters fight for, because that is what every character is fighting for in some way. Love. Final Fantasy VI is pretty much explicit in how important love is. I hear some might say that Realm and Strago's motivations are weak, but in the context of this game, it's not. That simple love between two family members is incredibly strong. Two people that act as a crutch for each other. That simple love is profound, as it's what gives these people meaning in their lives at that moment. And it's precisely why Kefka is this walking, nihilistic, sadistic clown of destruction, because he's never had any sort of love in his life. There are lots of parallels between characters in this game, but I think the strongest is Terra and Kefka. Both have all the reasons they need to just hate everything. Terra and Kefka were formed to be things of destructions for a cold-hearted regime with no love. But Terra searches for and finds that love, while Kefka buries himself in hate instead. Terra decides to give the children what she and Kefka never got growing up. Love. The credits sequence of Final Fantasy VI is absolute peak fiction. Slap my mama, slap my daddy, this shit goated. It's filled with little cute interactions between the party members, but also incredibly substantial ones. Like Celeste almost getting killed for Locke's bandana. but him saving her in the same way he wasn't able to save Rachel, showing that having loved and lost Rachel wasn't for naught since he has grown from those experiences. Realm tells Strago she would genuinely like to paint his picture to capture the essence of the grandfather she adores and immortalize him in a way. Like how we can remember the people we love through pictures, even if they are long gone. Even though the Espers cease from this world, Tara is able to remain in the world through her human side because of the things she had been longing for. Her love and connection to this world, something that not even her mother did. In the final scene, after seeing the makeshift family she nurtured blooming with happiness after the birth of new life, she lets loose her hair, somewhat paralleling her slave crown being removed at the beginning of the game, and lets the wind flow through her hair as she embraces the freedom granted by her love and the feelings of the people she cares about drifting on the wind through the newfound perspective of a girl who embodies love.